go. Sorry, look, new recording, not used to recording on my phone. Things are going to be a bit janky, but we're going to have to roll with it. It's going to be great. Anyway, Leeds United have a hell of a lot of business to do in this window. As we all know, we need attacking players. As we all know, could maybe do with a goalkeeper, could definitely do with a striker, but sometimes it is good to revisit old targets to see if they're available now, and if they are, then fantastic. You're doing pretty well and winning from it. Basically, I'm going to sum this up as briefly as I can. Leeds United still reportedly retain a little bit of an interest in Harry Wilson, and importantly on top of that, Harry Wilson has not yet been reported to have signed a contract at Fulham. I'll get on to why that's important in a minute's time, but first I'll run through how Harry Wilson did since we failed to sign him. Since we failed to sign him, last season he managed to get himself 11 goals and 8 assists in the Premier League, which are incredibly high numbers. Better returns than I think any of our players apart from... No, including Calvert-Lewin. That's more goal involvements than Calvert-Lewin, which is a shame. Would have been nice if he could have done that at Leeds United and caused some more problems for other sides, and we might have genuinely finished in the top half or in Europe if we'd managed to sign Wilson, but it didn't pay off, and that's fine. And importantly, he's out of contract at the end of June, specifically on the 30th, because for some reason the football calendar has this weird thing where all contracts are scheduled to end at the exact same time, being the 30th of June. It might be because it's a little bit easier to manage things like the Bosman rule or stuff like that, but it's a little bit weird. Reportedly, there is a contract on the table for him, but nothing has come out about him having signed it. Said contract has been on the table for the majority of the season, and there's been no movement, which is incredibly weird. It's not just Leeds that have a reported interest at the moment, though. There is reportedly interest coming from Everton, which is not that huge of a problem for us, to be completely honest with you. Everton fancying him is like a club of the same stature, at the same sort of level of ambition at the moment. Admittedly, Everton are going to say to themselves, look, we want to finish in Europe, but realistically their current sort of mode is being roughly mid-table after several relegation battles, and this season they looked a bit better, but not incredible. The big issue there is Aston Villa having an interest. The thing with Aston Villa having an interest is they get Champions League football, and they just won a European trophy, which makes things a little bit difficult. There is a positive to this from our perspective, and that's the fact that Aston Villa aren't the most flush with cash at the moment. Yeah, they've got a bit of money, and sure, they're doing okay for themselves. But in terms of wages that they can offer, it's not brilliant. In terms of transfer fees they can pay, that's not super relevant to this one. But that's not the most brilliant either, so they'll need to either look to offload players or not pay players quite as high wages if they're signing them in, which means that we have a potential advantage in the fight for Harry Wilson, because we can always just pay that little bit more in terms of wages. Because, as we've heard, the transfer strategy that we follow means that we're potentially looking at free players like a Metcha, like a Calvert-Lewin, but we're doing so whilst meaning that some of the money that will go to the club is instead going to the player in the form of stuff like signing fees, which makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. Putting money into signing fees means that the player benefits more. We benefit because we get to sign them. The only people that don't benefit are the clubs that aren't us, which is kind of in itself a benefit to us, because it means that teams like Fulham lose out on a bit of cash. Fact of the matter is, they haven't capitalised on the fact they've got Harry Wilson. Sure, they've scored a few good goals. Brilliant. They've gotten a couple of results they wouldn't have otherwise. Fantastic. They've not gotten into Europe, which I think is arguably what they would have needed to do to make up for the fact that they've missed out on 8 to 10 million quid last summer. Whereas he's now going on a free, unless he isn't, but it feels a little bit like he is, because if he wanted to stay at Fulham, he could have stayed at Fulham. There's also a chance that he's sort of playing the bidders against each other, if that makes sense. So it's not just a case of, if you're a selling club, like I imagine that we will be when it comes to the likes of Willie Gnonto this summer, it's not just a case of we can say multiple clubs are bidding for this player, so let's drive the price up that way. He can just say, look, you all want me. Whoever offers me the better wages and the better signing package, go nuts. and he can then bounce us and Fulham and Everton and Villa against each other and see what financial package he's able to wrangle out of everyone, which makes a lot of sense. However, there's a couple of little notes that I think work very heavily in our favour. The first of those is that he very clearly wasn't opposed to the move last summer. When it came to an interview discussing it, basically Harry Wilson said, it was deadline day, I didn't really know much of what was going on, but apparently I was going to Leeds. Which he didn't seem mad about the fact. He's not sort of called that out as saying, well, I didn't want to go, so why would the club trying to force me out, or all this kind of nonsense. He seems to be in a position where he's kind of like, I don't mind where I go. It's fine. Like, at the end of the day, this is another factor that plays into it. A lot of his mates play at Leeds. Darlow is here, plays with him for Wales. Ampadu is here for Wales. Rodon, Wales. James, Wales. To an extent, Charlie Crew, a couple of times, they've hung out because they've both played for Wales at the same time. There's a lot of factors that sort of help us out, and in addition to all of that, he is sort of exactly what we need. What we were looking for at the end of the last window was a winger that can play on the inside, which is sort of what Brendan Aronson is, just without that sort of shine on him, without the polish, without the extra quality. Brendan Aronson is the kind of player that you will play consistently and all the time, which I don't have an issue with last season because he was pretty decent and we didn't have an option. But at the end of the day, there were a lot of chances that he could have finished that he didn't. So if you have a look at the Chelsea match in the FA Cup, Aronson could have done a little bit better there. And that puts us in the lead. And if we're in the lead at that point, then we look a little bit better because we're reasonably good at holding leads at the moment. But we didn't do that, and I feel like that's an opportunity that Harry Wilson puts away. I think he'd work really well with Calvert-Lewin, because he, let's be honest, puts chance after chance after chance on a plate. 8 assists this season compared to, I think, Brendan Aronson's 1, or something like that, which is, again, blows him out of the water. We need someone that can play that creative role at the top of the pitch, so it's not all falling on Noah Okafor. And if it hasn't fallen on Okafor this season, it's basically been, right, Bogle, Gudmundsson, what can you do? Which, to the point where they got consistently injured, wasn't a huge amount. In essence, we're looking for someone to play the Okafor role on the right, and I think Harry Wilson suits down to the ground. Fits our current strategy of signing players that are undervalued for less than their probable value if they were contracted at a club, which is perfect. Fits the age category and experience category, absolutely brilliant. Fits the profile of player that we need, which is wide player that can cut inside and do some creativity and score some goals, because he's done exactly that last season. It's one that we could really do with, I think. And whilst there isn't any news that's saying Leeds United have definitely signed him or anything along those lines, knowing our ownership and knowing the management, this is one that we are keeping a close eye on. Because we wanted him last summer, and nothing in the last 12 months will have persuaded us against signing him. So keep a close eye on Harry Wilson, because either he will sign a deal at Fulham, which will bring this all to a shattering halt, or we will be firmly in the bidding war, which could be fascinating. Things will all start to ramp up towards the 30th of June, no doubt, because that's when his contract expires, and that's when, let's be honest, all transfer news is going to go kaboom, because the end of the financial year. But it's going to be interesting. Anyway, that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't yet. All that kind of stuff. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you later. Toodaloo. And now I've got to manually press the stop button rather than just the mouse. I know, and I'm not going to bother editing this bit out either. It's great. If you've managed to stick around to this part, reply with the word dragon. Because he's Welsh, I guess. Anyway, back to doing Lake District things. Toodaloo.